The era of the beast is at an end, and the vermin doom has ushered in a new and terrible reality. As hungry Skaven pour out into the mortal realms in their millions, the hour of ruin is nigh. Chronicles of Ruin. Wrack and Ruin. The bells were screaming. Not literally. The nearest of the great warp shatter bells was miles away. At the same time, they screamed in Vasquik's ear as if they were mere paces distant. Their wails sent the black hunger in his guts writhing. A lash coiled around his brain. The Clawlord salivated, yanking on the reins of his mount. The Norbeast hissed and growled, long fingers scrabbling at Akshuian earth. The compulsion was intense. Drool pooled in his muzzled helm, but no surrender to the spasming of his stomach. Vasquik had to remain clear-headed. His masterful strategies needed seeing through. From atop a hillock of ash, he watched his swarms advance on the Man-Thing settlement. Dirkgrave, his Eshin hirelings had said it was called, before they scuttled back into their shadows. Vasquik didn't really much care what the surface dwellers chose to name their warren. It was marked for death, either way. The first wave of rat-men had hurled themselves against the arcane barrier protecting the outpost until it overloaded. Over their charred corpses, more chittering clan rats and storm vermin in black and white rags surged. Those were the sacred colours, ordained by Lord Visixscour, demon prophet of the horned rat, and donned under his evil eye. No clans here. All served the prophet's great grand Nor horde, the manifestation of his consuming will. Barks of fusel fire came from those man-things still defending their home. They stood knee-deep in the dead, and a sergeant barked an order, seconds before a Jezzail shot punched through her forehead. Hastily prepared waves of bullets tore through the ratmen, enveloping the defenders like a liquid mass. Ranks of Skaven crumpled, yet the bells kept clanging. Skaven kept swarming, and man-things fell in multitudes. Yes, Vasquik really was a genius. Still, he frowned. "Taking too long," the Clawlord muttered. "Supposed to be near the coast by now." Green lightning flashed in racked and dirty skies. Vasquik inhaled, savouring the thickened warp winds that blew across the Nor. The domain that the Skaven had ripped out of Akshui and made their own carried Blight City's reek. That pervasive stench, the odour of innumerable foul things. Through a corrupt emerald haze, jagged spires of dirty brass could be spied, cyclopean and wicked, as they reached towards the evil skies. They had torn the skin of Akshui, turned its blood noxious and its surface virulent. The unusual survival of the Man-Thing settlement here, buffeted by gales of unclean magic, had only ever been a stay of execution. Still, too slow, all of it. Lord Scour had demanded the Nor cleansed, the first stage of this great grand war of mastery. But those delays weren't Vasquik's fault. The Nor horde were blessed to suffer the Black Hunger's single-minded fury, its frenzy lending them strength and vigour, but it left their swarms challenging to control. Anything more than a headlong charge across the blasted land had required a great degree of cunning and effort. Vasquik had simply acted with appropriate caution. Yes, that was it. There was more than just the Sigma rites to consider. Warbands sworn to the Man-Thing Ever-Chosen still lurked in the Nor, clinging on in defiance of all good self-preservation. Many had seen reason and joined their forces with the Skaven, but some refused to recognize their real masters. Beneath Vasquez's muzzle helm, the scar left across his jaw by some dark oath tribe mongrel's blade ached. It had provided a lesson, though. For the last few days he had been taking every precaution to prevent his swarm blunting its fangs on needless foes, even if that meant long diversions. There was old, canny, verminous sense in that. He didn't hold on to power by being reckless. One of the man-things down below seemed to have organized a knot of defense. Volleys of fire under his direction had somehow beaten the hunger frenzy out of Slizzik's claw pack. They turned, tripping over bodies in their route, muzzles still coated in blood. Once their fear was in the air, others would soon scent it. Intolerable! Vasquez's ire was directed at the Warlock engineers clustered about the hillock, squabbling over the salvage. He jabbed his glowing halberd at the nearest. "You! Why has this not been dealt with?" The skirry technomages wore Norhord's attire, but they were censored enough to heed him, eyes wide behind their goggles. The nearest of them shifted, genuflected. "1,000 apologies, insightful lord." Fumbling with his robes, he produced a cable-studded farsqueaker and shrieked into the device. As Vasquez watched, weapons with stalks protruding from bulbous fuel drums began to jostle their way through the swarms. 3 warp fire thrower teams moved with a mix of bullishness and trepidation, snapping at any who drew too close. As man-things hurriedly reloaded, the weapons teams took up position, aiming straight down the main thoroughfare. There was a throaty roar as sheets of emerald fire vomited from their nozzles. The street vanished in flame as Sigmarites and Slizzik's clan rats became screaming, thrashing candles. The roar suddenly became an uncomfortable keening. Vasquez couldn't be sure whether some lucky man-thing had shot a fuel drum, or if a Skaven gunner had simply been over-eager. Either way, one of the throwers suddenly went up in a bright green nova. Its twins followed, the operator's screeches cut short, the battle briefly obscured by the conflagration. Vasquez squinted, looking away from the flare. Then a voice nearby soured his mood. "Taking too long, Vasquez." A figure draped in grey climbed the hillock, leaning on a staff hung with bells and rat-tails. Glittic's eyes bulged with signs of recent warpstone ingestion. Yet his curving horns, the mark of the Grey Seers, saw the Claw-Lord withhold any petty remark. Still, Vasquez scowled. Glittic's tongue was as sharp and acidic as any Deathmaster's knife. Lord Scour had demanded their cooperation, and the only thing that had made it tolerable was the Seer's tendency to disappear for days on end. Vasquez's suspicions at such times were offset by his relief of not having to hear his voice. No such mercy now. "You hesitate, Claw-Lord," Glittic said. "Lord Scour commands his holy warriors to carry his proclamations of death doom to the coast. Yes, yes." He jabbed a finger towards the horizon, where more flashes of warp lightning racked the sky. "Hellground is close. There, we must offer our strength. Cannot be stalled here. I know this." His chest puffed out. "His bleak eminence speak jitters to me, not you." "So you say, most august of augurs," Vasquez snapped before jabbing his halberd towards Dirkgrave. "Observe, though, we make progress." The master moulders of Clan Rasp had been wise to bow before the Norhord when it ripped through their territory and feasted upon their flesh pits. Their mutants now spearheaded the charge. As Rat-Ogors bounded over the toppled masonry, a small mountain of flesh advanced through the smog. The brood terror swung its chain flail through a spire as warp flame screamed from its arm-mounted cannon. Cannonballs slammed into the monster's flanks, ripping out chunks. The beast gurgled and staggered backwards a step, but it didn't fall.
"Too slow!" Glitic shrieked. "Typical of a gruel-brained lord of Verminus. Fortunately," he smirked, "I have already taken wise, smart measures to solve this conundrum." "Measures?" Frosqueak said.
Something in that utterance saw his fur bristle. Glitic's smirk didn't help. The grey seer turned, descending the hillock. With a last glance at Dirtgrave, Frosqueak yanked his mount's reins and urged it to follow. They passed mounds and valleys where the ashen sands glowed green. Glitic seemed unconcerned by possible treachery, and Frosqueak, admittedly, was curious enough to avoid driving his blade into the seer's back, for now.
"It is time you saw grasp my vision,"
Glitic said, entering a cave beneath a dune. Emeralds spark from braziers of warp flame, 13 of them, ringing the central space. Muzzled storm vermin stood at cardinal points, red-ringed eyes betraying the cramps of hunger in their guts. That wasn't what drew Frosqueak's attention, though.
"All is ready,"
Glitic chuckled, as more storm vermin emerged from the side cavern. They hustled a cleric into the ritual space inside the cave. His Sigmarite doublet had been torn, revealing 8-pointed symbols inked onto the flesh beneath. He wasn't alone. 12 figures knelt, bound and restrained. Some Dark Oath tribal shaman, a slender being in a silvered mask. Even a bringer of the word of the clan Pestilence. It was the last captive, though, that saw Frosqueak pause. This one was clad in black and gold plate, though it was easy to miss, thanks to the warp-forged chains and rune-cut bindings lashed across almost every inch of them. The fetters bound them to the altar, as did the mask-like clamp affixed over their lower face, while nearby Skaven levelled halberds warily. The security seemed apt. Despite the sorcery clearly addling them, there was a quiet, fuming outrage in the prisoner's bloodshot glare.
"That is one of the Vanguard."
The Clawlord's voice was a hiss, adrenaline flooding his blood.
"You take the ever-chosen sworn blades. You have been collecting these individuals. Explain." "Servants of our rivals, Lord Scour,"
Glitic grinned.
"Speakers of false truth. Much effort I have expended, some snatched from their camps, others bargained from the court of Kritok Foulblade. In their blood lies power, Frosqueak, power to rip-rend the veil and call the prophet's kindred." "But this—"
Frosqueak twitched, tail quivering. Nothing came from the Foulblade's larders without cost, but that was the least of his concerns.
"The ever-chosen's hordes trust us little enough already. Supposed to fight as one, if this was known. Too much! Too much!" No, nothing is too much for us now,"
Glitic crooned, turning pointedly from the Clawlord.
"We are in the ascendancy. The time of our arrivals is done finished. You are craven, weak Frosqueak, unsuited to this new age."
The cave swirled with infernal gales. Dark corpuscent crackled. The bells droned louder as Glitic approached the altar, warpstone dagger in hand. As if stirred by his presence, the Varangard jolted, straining fruitlessly against bonds that glowed a virulent green. Ignoring him, Glitic began chanting. Dread welled up in Frosqueak's chest.
Wait,
he screeched, as storm vermin drove halberds into the captives, and Glitic dragged the dagger across the Varangard's bulging throat. Green light erupted from the wound like a detonating scary pressure bomb. Glitic threw himself prone, wailing, as storm vermin were reduced to ash. The cavern groaned as if in pain. Frosqueak's Norbeast reared in terror, throwing him from the saddle as it skittered away. A ghoulishly vast shape pulled itself from the cut in reality that the Varangard's corpse had become. The demon was a scratch upon the world. Its eyes shone with concentrated malice. Vasquik could scent its foulness even over the cloying, pungent blend of his and the Grey Seer's fear musk.
Facilitators, lacquer wills.
The Vermin Lord's words were knives scraped over the mind.
Who dare summon mighty Chitterclaw, witch of scours, sludge-pawned broodlings, seek aid in pleasing the prophet?
Vasquik's gaze darted to Glittic. The Grey Seer was still blinking away the flare of summonation. The Claw Lord saw his chance. He pointed at the summoner.
Hit it, most terrible of lords!
Stepping from the fleshy wreckage of the sacrifice, the Vermin Lord reached down. It scooped up Glittic, incisors shearing off the Grey Seer's head before it consumed the corpse. The demon swallowed, green-black lightning crackling from its eyes. The rattle of laughter drew Vasquik's eyes upwards from where he'd buried them in the ground. Chitterclaw's gaze flayed him to the core.
The prophet chooses curious puppets.
The demon spoke as if tasting the words, as if tasting him.
But malleable, you will suffice.
Its nostrils flared.
War scent I smell, murder to make.
It gave a slick chuckle.
Calm yourself. Your swarms will rend the man-things and crack their bones as I command, as the prophet wills.
The Vermin Lord nodded, tail snaking.
Is this not why you allowed the Grey Seer his schemings, to pay the penalty for letting us walk this realm?
Yes, that was true, wasn't it? Vasquik had allowed Glittic his plots, and look at him now. As the lethal edge of panic was blunted, Vasquik felt manic laughter ripple up in his throat. He clamped down on it. His eyes shifted to the piles of flesh that had been the assorted priests of ruin.
Questions?
Chitterclaw's head cocked.
Only!
Inside his muzzled helm, the Claw Lord licked dry lips. His throat was hunger raw now.
Why then, good one, why use the souls of Chaos Swarm to summon you? Because the time passes. Ours comes. We are amongst them now, seated on their pantheon,
Chitterclaw said, breath steaming like poison wind.
They scorned us, made us skitter in the shadows. Fear-filled they were, because they knew we were their antithesis. Our swarms kill with frenzy but no rage. We scheme not for change, but for changeless mastery. We defile without bringing new life. We consume without joy. Yes, always have we been the rats, gnawing in their bellies. They will learn this no less than the shining man-things in this new age. We will use the Chaos Sworn, grind our foes to ruin with them. Then we shall gnash feast on their bones too.
Slowly, the demon approached the Claw Lord and raised a talon. It settled upon Vasquik's face. Fear flushed through the Claw Lord, visions of his throat being slit and blood spraying forth. Instead, Chitterclaw unhooked the chieftain's muzzle. It clattered to the ground with a clang. Vasquik gasped, chewing and gnashing at the air, ravenous saliva spilling free. The bells were almost deafening now.
Now rise, spawn of ours, Chitterclaw chuckled. Always let us gnaw this world to ruin.